Dalton, Riley, Wolves, and Wagers. Got our 2027 NBA All-Star predictions. Kick us off, Ryan.
Yeah, this is going to be a bit of a longer video, but we're excited. It's excited to think about all the young talent in the league. But 3 years in the future isn't that long. So guys like KD, Curry, and even LeBron, are they still playing? Are they still putting up all-star type numbers? It's hard to say, so we're just going to omit those guys, but we want to show our respects for them because they very well could still be playing at an all-star level. But as LeBron will be in his 40s. Curry and KD will be pushing 39. It's just hard to project where they're at. So we're going to leave them off this list, but I'll kick it over to you to start with our Western Conference starting point guard.
Yeah, and absolutely loaded in the backcourt. It was tough to make this decision, but ultimately we both agreed that SGA is going to be the starting point guard, and he's putting up MVP type numbers over the last 2 seasons. And when you kind of look at where the Thunder are at, they're going to build around him. They're going to start trading some of those picks, and I don't blame them because I think he could be an MVP in this league, right?
Yeah, he projects as a guy who I think can be the best player on a championship winning team. So it's hard to leave him off this list. We love SGA's game. It's just so silky smooth. And he also passes and rebounds. He does everything that you would want. Like you said, I think he could win an MVP in his career. And another guy that we're super high on in that other starting guard spot, maybe a little biasism from us here, but Anthony Edwards. I mean, when you look around the league, people who are constantly raving about Ant saying he's going to take that next step, I think he already would have if he wasn't on such a roster with so much talent as far as like Rudy Gobert and Karl-Anthony Towns. Like if he was in SGA's position, I think he could be averaging close to 30 just like him. But come 2027, as Rudy and Cat are a little bit older, that's when Ant's really going to take the reins. And even Jaden McDaniels to that point where he's playing a bit more usage. But Anthony Edwards will make some starting spots in his career, and I think in 2027 will be one of them.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it on the head. These 2 spots are going to flip-flop year after year depending on who's having the better season based off of obviously injuries to certain players, but that backcourt to us is fully loaded. And then you can probably lean into Luka at the small forward, who I know he's probably technically a guard when the voting comes around in 4 years, but I think you got to have him at small forward, especially when you look at all of the guards in the league and you look at kind of all of our points towards who do we want the starting 5 to be, put the best players on the floor outside of position. Now we do kind of lean into 2 guys later on here, but we have Luka at small forward, right?
Yeah, our hope is that by 2027 comes around, it's a positionless thing where it's just the best 5 players. But if it's not, hopefully they do put Luka in that small forward spot and say, there's no way we can leave out, only have one other guard besides Luka. There's just too much talent in the league and in the West alone to where you only have Luka in one other spot. But Luka will be an all-star starter probably for the next decade plus. He's just that good. Going to win at least one MVP at some point. He has to. There's just no way he doesn't. Maybe he wins multiples, boy wonder, whatever you want to call him. He lives up to that name. And then moving on, another guy who's kind of a little European wizard, not little, 7'5", Wemby. Like he's going to be a starter sooner rather than later, even though he's only going to be 22, 23 years old. He's just got that kind of popularity and impact that he's going to make a lot of rosters in his career. And I think even at the young age of 22, he could be starting.
Yeah, I think the power forward spot is wide open in the West, and Wemby fits the bill on my side of who could take that next jump. And we've seen it throughout the last couple of years, all this draft hype. And, the first half has been pretty brutal to him this year, but second half he can take over and drop 20 and 10 in the fourth quarter, easy peasy. And then our center, I think this is probably unanimous and should be. He's the best player in the NBA, and he's 6'10" and can barely jump. But the guy just falls out. That's the Joker, right?
Yeah, if he's still playing, he'll be an all-star. We don't really know. We don't know much about him. He could be racing horses at that point. He's won a title already, so he could just be into horse racing out in wherever he's from, Serbia. But Joker will be a starter as long as he's playing until he gets older in his career. He's still in his 20s, so he'll absolutely be a starter 3-4 years from now. But moving on to our reserves is where it gets exciting. Devin Booker, he's still going to be in his prime, and he's going to be probably flip-flopping with a guy like Anthony Edwards and maybe even SGA in their careers. But as of now, we have him as like the uber 6th man. But I know you like Book.
Yeah, top 5 player in the league right now, in my opinion. But when you have SGA, you have Anthony Edwards, and then you also have another guard who's been, I know, in some trouble off the court, and that's John Morant. a lot of people might say, hey, Ja doesn't really deserve to maybe be on this list because Tyus Jones is maybe the more valuable point guard to Memphis. We don't agree with that. Ja's a high flyer. We got him in one of our guard spots.
Yeah, Ja, he's an unreal talent when he's on the court. He can easily average 28, 7, and 6. He does more than just score. Great passer. Obviously, he is one of those ultra combo guards who can still move the ball. Great lob threat, like, as a passer. And like you said, as long as he's on the court and not getting into off court issues, which I do think he will be going forward, he should be fine. He's going to be an all-star, arguably a starter. And then another guy who's in his same draft class, who's another great talent, can't stay on the floor for different issues as far as injuries go, Zion. I mean, we saw him put up, 36, 38 on the Wolves last night. He's just that good of a talent. If he figures out his weight and can stay healthy, he's always going to be on an all-star roster.
Yeah, I mean, a mini Shaquille O'Neal. I had him in the starting five to start, and then I kind of plugged Wemby in over him based off of those health concerns. But if he's healthy, he's going to have a couple of years where he's a starter for sure. And then a guy who is a Minneapolis, Minnesota kid, we got Chet alongside SGA as an all-star. Dive into Chet, Rye.
Yeah, we love his game as far as what he does on the court. The Thunder are going to be good enough to where they're almost demanding 2 all-star spots, kind of like the Wolves are this year. And the league is going to have to respect that. He's a super efficient player. He's almost like Wemby. He's just a little bit shorter version of Wemby. He does all the same things, can stretch the floor, plays defense, blocks shots. Chet's going to make some all-star games in his career, and hopefully he's doing them sooner rather than later. And another guy who we love, he's a baby Jokic. He's whatever you want to call him. He's going to make some all-star games as well, and it might be surprising to some of you guys. Some of you guys maybe not. I know he's kind of picking up steam as far as all-star bids go already, but Alperen Sengun.
Yeah, I think he's by far the best player on the Rockets right now, and I think he's only going to get better. Actually watched him live not too long ago, and he's already light years ahead of where he was at. So I think he is going to have a couple all-star appearances, especially with kind of how the big men in the West are kind of weaker currently. Now, a lot of things could change, but we got Sengun in there. And then leading to the reserves, this was pretty tough. And I'll kind of start off with one of my favorite players in the league, and that's Desmond Bane. And you kind of look at the numbers that he's putting up without Ja. Numbers don't lie. But when you do kind of lock him down and he's not maybe making shots, you could easily say some of these guys will be all-stars. But I think for a long time to come, him and Ja will be making all-star appearances as a backcourt duo.
Yeah, they were the 2 seed last year. And I thought maybe even there's an argument for Bane over Triple J. Now, Triple J won DPOY, so I don't mind them giving him that all-star nod. But going forward in the future, I think both those backcourt guys in Memphis will be getting the nods fairly consistently. Bane will at least make a couple, in my opinion. And like you hit the nail on the head as far as his game goes. It just projects really well next to Ja. And if they're winning ball games, he will make a roster. And then that last wild card spot is going to go to De'Aaron Fox. Now, is he still in Sacramento? I think probably. I know he's on an extension there right now. He's averaging 30 points a game this season. I know the sample size isn't huge, but he's going to be making rosters year in and year out if he continues to do what he is. And because he's in his mid-20s, I absolutely think he can still be doing that 3-4 years from now.
Yeah, obviously, he's probably not on the same level as, the Books, the Jaws, the SGs, the Anthony Lucas, but he's still nasty, and it's great for that small market in Sacramento. We understand that because we're getting Anthony Edwards. So congrats to Sacramento. De'Aaron has really taken that next step to where you can consistently find him on all-star rosters. But do you kind of want to jump into some of the guys who we have in our honorable mentions, right?
Yeah, these guys could easily be interchangeable for some guys on this roster. Karl-Anthony Towns, he's made 3 all-star games in his career, has a chance to do it again this year. If the Wolves are a top 4 seed, they probably are going to get 2 all-stars. Who does he replace? I don't know. If it's via injury replacement, that'd be probably a better route for him. But he could also just make it outright. He's that good. He's been that good. But he's taken a back seat in Minnesota, and we don't think he quite makes the roster outright. But he could. Another guy, or 2 guys, 2 Nuggets. Jokic at some point, I think, will have a Denver Nugget teammate with him, whether that be MPJ or Jamal Murray is to be determined. Jamal hasn't stayed the healthiest, or else he probably would have at least 1 all-star appearance in his career. And then MPJ, if he gets to that 20-point per game mark or even more, he shoots over 40% from deep. He's just an efficient bucket getter, and he's a popular player around the league, so he could probably sneak in as well. But you want to touch on the last 2 guys we were kind of looking at?
Yeah, we kind of talked about him. That's Triple J. It's tough to have three All Stars year in year out, especially with the John Morant situation. And Triple J is obviously a really good third piece. I'm not complaining whatsoever if he's the third option because he does a lot of things well to fit alongside Bane and Ja. But he's ultimately probably going to miss come 4 years from now, right?
Yeah, and then I'll just quickly mention another guy I like a lot. I don't know if he'll make All Star games because of Chet and because of SGA, but J Dub. Like he projects to be a pretty good ball player. He is right now. He's averaging close to 20 points per game already. I think he's over 18. But he could maybe sniff an appearance here or there. But in a small market with SGA and Chet already taking two spots, I think there'd have to be a lot of injuries for him to get in. But really like his game a lot. But moving on to the East, pretty easy to start with Tyrese Halliburton. I think he'll be a starter for the next decade plus. He's just that good where if he's averaging over 25 points a game and over 10 assists a game, how do you leave him out? He's super efficient. He plays winning ball now. And if they get some defense figured out, that Pacers team is going to be really, really good. What are your thoughts on Hallie, though?
Yeah, I mean, I just look at the East backcourt as well, and there's some names that we're going to talk about. They're just some nasty ball players. But Halliburton, I think, is going to be the starting point guard come 2027. He's absolutely unbelievable. MVP candidate for Indiana. Nonetheless, go look at the roster that he's playing with, and you tell me that they should be in playoff contention. No shot. And then leading into our second guard spot. Now, this is completely up for debate. We love great debates, but we're going to put LaMelo there currently based off of popularity. And I want you to kind of dive into that, right?
Yeah, if they still have the same format for the starters as they do now, LaMelo will get a huge fan vote. He's got over, I think, 10 million followers on Instagram. He's just super, super popular. And as long as the Hornets aren't a bottom dweller, even if they're like 500 or slightly below, he's going to be a guy that gets starter contention or for sure will be an all-star. But his popularity alone can make him an all-star. And just he's also deserving. When you look at his raw numbers, he made it his second year in the league, averaging like 28-7. I think his peak could be like a 25-7 and 7, 25-8 and 7, whatever it may be. Maybe the assist goes down, maybe they don't, but LaMelo Ball will make more rosters, and I think he will be a starter at one point as well.
Yeah, and then kind of leading into the small forward, I don't think there's any ifs, ands, or buts about this for the next probably 8 years. You mentioned about Halliburton. I think for Jason Tatum, no ifs, ands, or buts. What are your thoughts, Ryan?
Yeah, plays in Boston, plays in a pretty big market, and he's a hell of a ball player. He's going to be there for at least the next 5 years, probably closer to 10. He's, I think, 26 now, just turned 26. Maybe he's still 25. He's young enough to where he could be there for an entire decade, even into his mid-30s, but great ball player. There's not much to say about him. That's another gimme. And then the next one, who also is going to be there as long as he's healthy, is Giannis. He's going to be in his 30s at that point, but it's still going to be early 30s. He's still going to be in his prime, and the way he plays is not going to destroy his body as long as he's not falling on the ground. But Giannis will be a starter, I think, come 2027.
Yeah, I still think he's going to put up nasty numbers. I mean, it's still crazy to think that he's taken this huge jump. I always had questions about him in the playoffs, and then he went and won a ring and beat D-Book in the Suns, so that was great. But then this one's kind of also up for debate. Joel Embiid at the center spot. Me and Riley both agreed that this would be his last season, his age 34 season, that he would be an all-star. When you go look at Shaquille O'Neal, after his age 34 season, the stats dropped off, and he actually didn't make an all-star until another 4 years later. So that's how I think Joel's career will kind of end out. What are your thoughts on Joel, Rye?
Yeah, when he gets to that 33, 34 age, because of his injuries throughout his career, I think that's going to start to really pile up. And like you said, when Shaq got to that age, the body just kind of went, and then he bounced around a lot after that. I think Joel will still be, a hell of a ball player. That's why we have him as a starter still at that point. But that will, I think, be his very last year, and he'd be lucky to make many more rosters at all after that. But shout out to Joel because he's still playing well, but I just don't really like the play style that he has, and him falling on the ground eventually is going to catch up to him. But moving on to the reserves, a guy that we talked about having in the starting five, and I think he will maybe make a starter spot at one point in his career, is Joel's teammate, Tyrese Maxey. Once he gets the reins in Philadelphia, when Joel's older, he's going to be averaging close to 30. He's putting up over 26 right now as a second option, and he's, 22 years old? And I know you like Tyrese Maxey a lot, so I'll let you dive into him a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, if the Pacers came to me on the Sixers and say 3, 4 firsts for Joel. I'm trading him. I'm just building around Tyrese Maxey. He's taken that next leap to where we had him in early MVP conversations. He's probably on the outside of the top 10 right now, just, playing alongside Joel and then all the talent that we talked about in this episode. But Tyrese Maxey, I think, is going to be on the roster regardless of start or reserve for a lot of years to come. But then when we look at the other guard spot, a lot of people will probably put a guy who we have lower on the list here, but we love us some Darius Garland. Right, digging the Darius Garland.
Should have been a Timberwolf. Roses tried trading up for him. We were both ecstatic. I mean, just an absolute sniper coming out of Vanderbilt. Cavs ended up taking him, and they're probably happy they did because when he's healthy and on the floor, he's absolutely an all-star. I know he didn't make it last year, but that's because he was missing time and also sharing the ball with another guy we don't really like, Donovan Mitchell. But come 2027, he's going to be entering that prime of his career, and I kind of see him as a Tyrese Halliburton. I think he's that good to where he can average, mid-20s for points, but also give you 9 assists a game. He's not quite the passer that Halliburton is, but he's really far up there, and I really like his game and how it projects long-term. And so when he's in his prime, he's going to be making rosters. And then another guy who could be a starter over Joel at this point, Paolo Banchero. I know he's young now. He just turned 21, but I could see already come 2027 that he's making starting appearances. That's how good he is. He plays like a mini LeBron. I'm not calling him LeBron, but that's just his play style. It reminds me of a younger LeBron, and he's going to fill out the stat sheet and make a lot of rosters.
Yeah, I think there was a reason Coach K retired after Paolo was drafted. I think he just wanted to end on his talent, and I don't blame him. I think he's going to be a stud in this league for a long time to come. And then a guy who has kind of done it for, probably half a decade now, and that's Bam Adebayo. And I think he still will be on an all-star roster, but you're going to start seeing Bam probably not have the numbers getting into his 30s like he used to. But what are your thoughts on having Bam as an all-star in 2027?
Yeah, when you look a little over 3, close to 4 years in the future, he's probably not going to be putting up, like you mentioned, the numbers he is now because he will be getting to that 30s. I don't know how well his body's going to hold up long-term. I don't think his game style is going to allow him to play into his late 30s. But when he's 30, 31, he's still going to be putting up all-star type numbers. Probably the best player on the Heat still, even though we're going to touch on another Heat player later. But Bam will be an all-star at that point. And a guy that we went back and forth on, and some of you probably don't agree, but we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt, Scotty Barnes. I think he will still be in Toronto. I think they're going to move OG. I think they're going to move Siakam as soon as this year to build around him because you either have to trade him or pay him. And I don't think they want to pay him. And that'll really open up things for Scotty Barnes. I don't know if he'll ever get to like 25 points a game, but he's a guy who's going to fill out the stat sheet constantly. He's a good passer. He's almost like a point forward. He's like a better scoring Ben Simmons in my eyes.
Yeah, and ideally you would want Scotty to probably be like your second option for kind of everything that he does well. But if I'm the Raptors, I'm doing exactly what you just said, and I'm building around Scotty Barnes. I'm just trying to go get assets to build around Scotty Barnes. So if he is, the face of a franchise and puts up numbers, he could find himself on an all-star spot. And I think he could make a couple all-star teams. I think we both agree on that. And then a guy who has made a lot of all-star teams, we can touch on a little bit, Donovan Mitchell. He's probably still going to be on an all-star team because he's going to put up 30 shots a game. But anything else you want to touch on Donovan Mitchell?
No, he'll be in his 20s at that point still, or like 29, whatever it may be. He'll be an all-star, but we don't really like him. But he deserves it, I guess. Jalen Brunson will take that last wild card spot. I think he will make his first appearance this year. I think he has to. If he doesn't, I don't know what the league's doing because he's playing in New York and they're a playoff team. He's the best player on that team. I think he has to be an all-star, and I'll let you go into him further because I know you really like Brunson's game.
Yeah, and I think it just comes down to he's taking more threes. When he came out of Villanova, he really worked the mid-range and was just the excellent playmaking and decision-making point guard under Jay Wright, a great coach. But now he's taking 6 threes a night. And even if he hits them at 40%, and I still think he's at 44%, that's elite level. He should be an all-star in Madison Square Garden. I hope that they can get him a little more help. RJ's been playing better, and Julius Randle is Julius Randle. But I hope they can get some talent out in Madison Square Garden. So you can kick it to we got a lot of reserves for the East before we end this episode. So, Rye, you can jump into some and we can kind of touch on whatever ones we want to touch on.
Yeah, the just missed list is pretty long, like you said. A guy that I really tried to work in here, I just could not figure out how to get him in, Cade Cunningham. I think the Pistons won't be on a 20-game losing streak in 2027. At least I'm hoping not. But I don't know if he'll be able to be the best player on a championship team. But as long as the Pistons are in this rebuild, he's going to put up numbers if he's on the court. And as he progresses into his mid-20s and gets into his prime, he's going to be a guy that can put up like 24, 7, and 7. You know, he's one of those guys that, like Scotty Barnes, like Paolo, that just fills out the stat sheet. I know they don't play the same, but the numbers will be there. So Cade will make a few at some point in his career. I just don't see it in 2027 unless it's via injury replacement or the Pistons are really, really good. And then a guy that Celtics fans maybe were waiting to hear his name called, Jaylen Brown, the $300 million man. I just don't know where he goes on this list. I think he's still in Boston because I think that's going to be a hard contract to trade. Now, maybe not in 2027 when you start looking at the CBA and how much the cap has went up. But if he's shooting at like 44% like he is this year, it's going to be tough for him to get in over these more efficient guys who are also putting up winning numbers. And then one of the guys you really like, this last one I'll touch on, Mikal Bridges. I don't know if he's still in Brooklyn. They're not going to win a championship with him as the one, but he could absolutely make an all-star team at some point in his career. If he was playing at the level he did post-trade last year, he probably would be an all-star this year. Now, he struggled a bit this year, and by struggle, I mean averaged 22 points. But he's a hell of a ball player, and I think he will make one at one point. It's just going to be tough in 2027.